Greetings and blessings to all of our viewers and all of our listeners from Yerushalayim. We're starting now Sefer Shmois, and the first parish, of course, is Shmois. And we would like to speak about a theme that perhaps is very relevant to us today, and that theme is the bright light. And of course, when we say the bright light, we're not speaking about where there's an illumination, because then it's no major effort to see the bright light. But in Parashas Shemais, we'll see that even in times of dismalness, in times of misery and tragedy, there's a very bright light that's shining. And if we really make the effort, we'll be able to discern the bright light. Even in times, as we just mentioned a moment ago, of hastoris, of concealment, we just don't see the revealed hanhoga of kindness, of chesed, v'toiv of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We think that somehow rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu has now concealed his countenance, which shines upon us, and bestows upon us loving kindness. Nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught us a very valuable lesson, one of the most valuable lessons that we could possibly learn. And that is, even in the course of hastaros, of concealment, we just don't see, as we mentioned a moment ago, the grace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu always performs, even in the Hastaros, a great revelation, and a bright light shines like a shining star. And that, of course, was pointed out by the Chazal. The Chazal point out on the pasuk that Vayokam Melech Chodosh al Mitzrayim asher lo yoda es Yosef, there was a new king that arose in Egypt that did not know Yosef. How is it possible not to know Yosef? After all, he's the one that built the empire of Mitzrayim. He made it the most predominant nation and the most powerful nation in antiquity. So Rashi says he had an evil personality. Yosef, he pretended he didn't know Yosef, and he made new decrees upon the Jewish people. And then we came to Hova Nischak Maloi, let us deal shrewdly with the Jewish people. You know why? Pain yirbe, lest they increase. They had a tremendous multitude of Jewish people in Mitzrayim, and they were increasing on a daily basis. We'll soon speak about that. And it said, pen yirbe, lest he increase. So they wanted to decrease. So Chazal undertook a type of play on words. And what was that play on words? Omar Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, not pen yirbe, but kain yirbe. Not they will chas v'shalom less and be diminished insofar as numerical additions are concerned. There won't be any pen yirbe, lest they increase. Kain yirbe, we just change one letter, say the Chazal, from a pei to a chaf, and they will surely increase. And that's what it says. It was a boomerang. It was the opposite. And as much as they would afflict them, so they would multiply. Yanu oisam, you afflict a nation, so the logical consequence would be that they would decrease insofar as bringing children into the world. And over here we see the opposite took place. And Paroi, insofar as prioritizing his agenda, what was the priority of his agenda? Like Rashi points out, B'Shem de Chazal, that the Jewish people will now become enslaved, inhumane cruelty, and the only possibility to ultimately save the Jewish nation, their redemption and their salvation, will occur through a redeemer. And because they were afraid that there will be a redeemer of the Jewish people that will bring about their salvation from Mitzrayim. So they planned so many plans in order to prevent Moshiach Shel Yisrael, the great redeemer of the Jewish people, coming into this world. And of course, first and foremost, they instructed the Jewish midwives to kill any male child. When that didn't work, they came up with plan B, like the Chazal tell us, that any child that's born, if he's a male, he should be thrown and drowned into the river. Nevertheless, despite all of these diabolical, evil plans to prevent Moshiach Shel Yisrael from coming into the world, and as such, there will be a possibility of redemption, salvation for the Jewish people. So lo and behold, a miracle took place, and indeed, Moshe Rabbeinu was indeed born, and miraculously, somehow or rather, his mother came up with an idea to cast him into the sea. Basya, the daughter of Paroi, found him, and she raised Moshe Rabbeinu in the palace of Paroi, and Paroi himself, the evil Paroi, the incarnation of evil itself, man, Satan, as it were, was the one that appointed Moshe Rabbeinu to be the Memuna, the supervisor of all activities in his palace. So we have over here a remarkable insight into the Hanhagah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, an unbelievable revelation in times of great concealment, the hidden chesed, kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Had Moshe Rabbeinu been born and reared in Midian, and his parents would not have been Yocheved and Amram, nevertheless, by the Hashkoch Elyono, he was eminently equipped to be the great redeemer of the Jewish people, and that we have no suffix. We know the greatness of Moshe. Therefore, it was totally unnecessary for Moshe Rabbeinu to have been born in Mitzrayim, to be miraculously saved by the daughter of Paroi, who committed basically an act of treason vis-a-vis her father. And of course, we all know that she was amply rewarded for that, because she was from the few people, from the very, very few people, never died. She went to heaven as her human form and shape are concerned. She did not have to undergo the ugly process of death. Nichnas l'Gan Eden b'shleimusa, in her perfect condition. And this, of course, is for the fact that she was able to rebel against her father. It was indeed an act of treason, perhaps punishable by death, when she saved Moshe Rabbeinu with the full awareness and full recognition that he is a Jewish child and a potential redeemer of the Jewish people. The greatness of Basya, the daughter of Paroi. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu make sure that the Jewish history would take a very, very important turn and have the Redeemer of the Jewish people born in Mitzrayim, miraculously saved by the daughter of the evil emperor, and have the evil emperor himself raise Moshe Rabbeinu, and due to the education, says Evan Ezra, that Moshe Rabbeinu received by Paroi himself. So he was even preeminently qualified to be the leader of the Jewish people and to redeem them and bring about the greatest salvation of all time. Why was this necessary? Ibn Ezra points out that Moshe Rabbeinu did not have a slave mentality because he was brought up, reared and raised in a royal home. And he had a royal personality. He was a person that had midas emes, and he had the courage that usually is associated and accompanies royal personalities. Since they don't have to answer to anybody, they're above and beyond the normal standards of behavior. So the answer is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to open the eyes of the Jewish people and show them, despite the fact that there are hastaros, the countenance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not shining upon the Jewish people. It's hester panim. It's concealed. It's not revealed. The Anhag of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of kindness and generosity. Nevertheless, he wanted the Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted that Jewish people should open up their eyes and see that in the midst of darkness, there's a tremendous bright light that's shining, that Paroi, despite all of his efforts to prevent Moshe and Shei Yisrael from coming into the world, so not only did he not prevent, he was very unsuccessful at that, preventing Moshe Rabbeinu from coming into the world, but on the contrary, he raised him. It was a scorn, it was a ridicule of Paroi, and this inspired the Jewish people with tremendous hope and faith that there will ultimately be the revelation. And that's why on Shabbosais, the Chazal tell us they went to the Botei Midrashais, Botei Knesiyos, and they read the scrolls of Bereshis. And in those scrolls, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised that there will be a complete redemption of the Jewish people. And Mitzrayim is a Yerido, the Tzarech Aliyah. The whole purpose for them descending to the lower levels of existence in Mitzrayim is in order that they should come out to be the greatest generation of all time, the generation that was Mekabel the Torah, and the generation that had a Mishkan of Ashras HaShechina in their very midst. And the truth of the matter is that we are now starting to read Sefer Shmos, and according to the mystics, we have now 8 weeks, because it happens to be a leap year, as opposed to 6 weeks, of what's called Shovavim, Shuvu Bonim Shovavim. It's a time of tshuva. It's a time for the Jewish people to strengthen themselves, repent, and reach very high madrigas. Why were these 8 weeks or 6 weeks chosen to be those weeks where the Jewish people have siyata d'shmaya? There's a divine dynamic force that will exist in the atmosphere, and this will help to uplift our spirits and will make it easier for us. It's a dynamic force, very powerful. It will make it much easier for us to reach high madrigas. What is unique about this period of time, this specific period of time? So the answer is, like Reb Chaim Brisker already pointed out, the halacha, that there's a difference between the kriyas HaTorah, the reading of the Torah, on the Yomim Tovim, on the festival days, and on Shabbosos. The festival days, so what's responsible, what generates, what precipitates the reading of the Torah? The Zman. So Pesach, we read about the redemption from Mitzrayim, because Pesach is the time of redemption. So Reb Chaim said that this Zman is Ma'oirer the Kriya. Shvuyas, we read about Matan Torah because Shavuos is the Zman that the Jewish people received the Torah. That's insofar as Yom Tov is concerned. However, insofar as Shabbos is concerned, it's the opposite. Kriyas of Shabbos is mutually exclusive to the Kriyas of Yom Tov. There, by Shabbos, what precipitates the Chiyuv Kriya? The Kriya itself, and that is Ma'ira the Zman. The Kriya of Parshas Shemois Va'ero Boy B'Shalach Yisrael Mishpatim and Truma Tetzaveh. So these parashas, as we read them on the specific Shabbos that they are assigned during the winter months, so they are me'oirer, they arouse a hanhogeh, a relationship, an association between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, which express the themes of these parashas. So we start Shemois, so the theme is Shibud Mitzrayim and the beginning of the Gula. Parashas Vayera V'Boy, we're already holding by the miraculous wonders of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the ultimate redemption from Egypt. And therefore we have Kriyas Yamsuf, the destruction of the enemy, total annihilation of the enemy, Matan Torah, Mishpatim, the special, unique code of conduct that the Jewish people have, and afterwards we have Hashras, Hashchina, Kadosh Baruch Hu is in our midst, Vasuli Migdash, Shechanti B'Seicham, Kadosh Baruch Hu is in our midst, Hashras, Hashchina. So these themes are expressed in the atmosphere, in the very metaphysical atmosphere. This unique Hanhog of HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to play in these weeks that we are dealing with. And therefore, there's a Siyata D'Shmaya, there's a divine grace that will help us to reach our own personal redemption, our own personal salvation through the process of tshuva, of return and repentance, and ultimately will also impact Klal Yisrael, and hopefully we will come to the Geula Shlema, to the final redemption of Melech HaMoshiach. And we read in Parashas Vayechi, insofar as Yehuda is concerned, so from Yehuda will emanate Melech Mashiach, as Yankov blessed him. Lo yosel shevet meYehuda mechek meiraglov ad sheyavoi Shiloi v'lo yikas amim Shiloi as Mashiach, and then there will be a ingathering of all the Jewish people to the Holy Land, as Hashem Yisbarach. So these are weeks that will arouse us, if we have enough intelligence to utilize these weeks, to have a proper understanding of what the challenge is. Tshuva is always a challenge, no question about it. And the challenge of tshuva during these weeks is made a lot lighter because there's inspiration and motivation. Metaphysical sparks are in the atmosphere, and we could easily latch on to them, and we can really reach very, very lofty, if not dizzying, madregas. And of course, the pasuk that the Zohar quotes is Shuvu Bondim Shoivavim. Shoivavim is Rosh Tevis Shmois V'Eira Boy B'Shalach Yud Yisrael Mishpatim. In the leap year, we also have Truma Tetzaveh. So this is the remez for Shoivavim, and just to mention an illustration of the great Jewish thinkers during the course of our history. So we know that the Gemara added a restriction, a limitation. Shuvu banim shevavim, a baskol, a divine voice came out, and the divine voice mentioned chutz miyachel, he was excluded. Acher was, of course, Elisha ben Avuya, a Tana, Kadosh Elokim, and Bayesheni, and he unfortunately went off. He was the Rebbe of Reb Meir, the great Tana Reb Meir. And Reb Meir every day tried to machzor him to do tshuva, unsuccessful, till he was very much afflicted, and he was on his deathbed. And Reb Meir came in and said, Chazar b'cha, do tshuva. And he asked his illustrious Talmud, Reb Meir, ad dirducha shel nefesh, when you're holding by your last breath. So the Meir said, yes, you can do tshuva even on your deathbed. V'samach Reb Meir, and when he walked out, Reb Meir, he was happy, even though Acher died. He was called Acher, another, because this was not his real personality. The genuine personality stayed holy. And the Meir samach b'davar, and he said, Kemedumani sherebbe chazar b'tshuva. He came to the conclusion that on his deathbed, on his last breath, literally, he was chayzer b'tshuva. And the Mefarshim point out in the Yerushalmi that that's why he called him Rebbe. Till then he was called Acher. So of course we understand, says the Reishis Chochmah, and the Shlo quotes him, that this was a nisayon that was administered to Acher. In other words, it was a trial. All of a person's life, he undergoes different trials and tribulations. This was a trial that was administered to Acher. Why? What was the trial? Because we have a saying in the Gemara, anything the Balabayas tells you, the owner, the proprietor, instructs you, you should do. Should be obedient, obey his instructions, his directions. Chutz mitzay, unless he tells you to go out. Who is this Balabayas? It's the one and only Balabayas. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Kol Masha Balabayas, the true, genuine, legitimate owner, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, created the world. He owns the world. He sustains the world, and he owns us. He created us, and he sustains us. And we have to listen to everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu instructs us, because we're no more than tenants that have to pay the rent to the landlord. And the rent that we have to pay is to obey everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. Chutz mitzay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Shuvu, Bonim Shevavim, everybody is instructed to do tshuva. Chutz miyacher, so he say mechitzasi, you are not allowed to be in my precincts. Even if you do tshuva, you will not be accepted. So this was a nisayon. What was a nisayon? Acher was a Tana Kadosh Elokim, he knew Shas perfectly. And he should have realized that chutz mi'acher was a nisayon. If he had enough intellectual grasp of the subject, he would have realized that, and he would have done tshuva. Says the Reishis Chochmah, because Kol Masha Balabayas Emer say chutz mitzay, that you don't have to listen to the Balabayas. So how come there was such a baskol? Because he had sinned so drastically. It was so radical, his change, that he lost The Hanhog Ato Noisein Yad Lapoishim HaKadosh Baruch Hu inspires you, encourages you to do tshuva through different ways and means. Many people do tshuva, they're unaware why they did tshuva. Kadosh Baruch Hu, in his deep way of running the world, so also in a mystical way, provided certain elements that would inspire a person to do tshuva. So that's Ata Naisin Yad Lapoishim. Kadosh Baruch Hu encourages it, and he implements in his ways and means of governing and running the world certain elements that come in, certain interpersonal relationships, whatever it may be. This he lost. He sinned so radically, fell from such a high level of Matana Kadosh Elokim to be Mechalel Shabbos, so he was denied that Hanhoga that we all have. Nevertheless, it was a Nisayon, and he had to exert his spiritual energies and abilities in order to overcome that. He didn't. These are the weeks that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ata Nosein Yad Lapoishim. We can all reach very high madrigas. And of course, the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh became quite well known in recent years. Even if somebody reached Memtes Shari Tumah, so from the Kabbalah, from the mystics, they said that if Chas v'Shalom somebody from Klal Yisrael would have been nichnas, would have gone into Nun Shari Tumah, there were many Jews that, unfortunately, not most, there were a few Jews that had reached the madrig of Memtes Shari Tumah. They would be irredeemable had they gone into Shar Nun. So the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh says that mystical mimer only applied before Matan Torah. After Matan Torah, if somebody was in Nun Shari Tumah, since we're holding after Matan Torah, we have the koyach, the power of Torah at our convenience almost. It's available to us. It's accessible to us. It's Torah today, very, very available, different languages. So after there's Torah that's available to everybody, so it's much, much easier to achieve tshuva even if you're in Nun Shari Tumah. And at this juncture, it will be very important to learn a Gemara that shows us what's called the bright light in darkness. There's no question about it. There were Jewish people that were not redeemed from Mitzrayim. No question about it. That had reached very low levels. However, the Jewish people in general reached the highest level. The brightest light in times of darkness was reached in Shibud Mitzrayim. Theoretically, during the Holocaust, it would have been possible for the Jewish people to likewise reach such levels, but due to the extra evil of the Nazim, Yamach Shemam, it was impossible. We'll discuss this in one moment. So at this juncture, it would be very worthwhile for us to mention the Gemara in Soita, which has to do to the beginning of Parashas Shemais. Jewish people in the crucible of affliction and suffering through the Koshei HaShibud, murdering babies, afflicting the Jewish people in a horrendous way with sorrow and misery, making them work. Avodas HaPorach, back-breaking work, So we will see the brightest light possible. And this bright light is the remarkable hallmark of Klal Yisrael. This is what kept Klal Yisrael in Mitzrayim during the Holocaust, will keep us today until that great day at Yevai Shila when Melech Mashiach will come, B'meir of Yameinu, in our day, very soon. And the point of departure is the Gemara, Daf Yud Beis, in Saita, where it says, Kivon Shegaz al Paroy HaRoshe, Kol HaBen HaYiloid HaYo'eret Tashlichu, V'chol HaBas Techayun. So the Gemara says, Amram Gadol Hador Haya. Amram was the leader, the de facto leader of the Jewish people, the father of Moshe Rabbeinu. So he remarked after that decree was implemented, Lashavanu Amelim. Amad v'giresh es ishta yamdu kulam v'giresh es nerseyam. Amram was the most outstanding leader of that generation. And when Paroi decreed every male child should be cast into the river, so in his great despair, because of this decree, argued, Lashav onu amelim, there's no use in us having children. Lashav, in vain, we struggle to bring children into the world. Because if they're a male, they will be annihilated. And if it's a female, Paroi said to Chayun. And even though we say in the Haggadah that Lavan was the worst Rasha of all, Bigesh Lakar es HaKoyel, mashma, that he was worse than Paroi, because Paroi did not want to destroy everyone. Lavan was ready, if he had the ability, to destroy his own grandchildren. That's what he threatened. Yesh Bikel Yodi, I do have the power to do it. But Paro's diabolical plan was, and there's many people today, contemporary people like George Soros, that would be very, very impressed with this. It's a Jewish Rishayim. So Paro's diabolical plan was to destroy the metaphysical quality of the Jewish people, because the women, Jewish women, babies will grow to be girls, girls grow to be women. They have absolutely no freedom, or they would not have any freedom, and therefore they would be forced to marry the Mitzrayim, and there would be a total assimilation. And that would not bother Paro, even if he knew the halacha, that the Jewish genealogy depends on the mother. Nevertheless, such a Jewish people, Paro would support wholeheartedly. To have a Jewish people who have no males, the only survivors would be females, and they would be assimilated totally in the Egyptian society. And such a Klal Yisrael, Paro would be very supportive of. According to our Chazal, Miriam was 3 years old. So she approached her father and said, Abba kosher g'zeiroscha yosem mishal Paro. Your decree is worse than Paro. What was the decree? He didn't decree anything. He just divorced his wife. But since he was a leader, so he had followers. The entire Jewish people divorced their wives. For what reason? What's the purpose of bringing children into the world? Deep despair. So she said, there's 3 reasons why you are worse than Paro. She's a 3-year-old girl spoke bechutzpah to her father, who was also the Gadol Hador. It's as if somebody said, "You're worse than Stalin." One, power like Gazar El al Ascharim, Vato Gazar Al Ascharim Kavis. Your decree is worse than power because it also applies to the female children. Two, power like Gazar El Boilam Hazeh, power only decreed in this world. The Ata Boilam Hazeh, Boilam Haba, and you in this world and the world to come. We'll soon see what this means. Number three, Para Russia, it's a Suffolk Miskayem, because they ask the question whether his decree will, so to speak, be implemented. Perhaps not. There's a Kadosh Baruch Hu in the world, but whatever you do, you're a tzaddik. Of course, everybody will follow you. Everybody will follow you, and they did follow. Klal Yisrael divorced their wives. No possibility of having children anymore. So Amram was a humble leader, did not try to rationalize himself. He accepted the rebuke of a 3-year-old girl, even though she spoke bechutzpah. Amad, and he made a lekuchen shneim. He remarried his first wife, Yochevet, Omdu Kulam, they also remarried. And from the second marriage of Amram and Yochevet, Moshe Rabbeinu came into the world. So to bring Moshe Rabbeinu into the world, it was worthwhile for Miriam to speak with chutzpah to her father. Rashi says one of the most remarkable insights into Torah wisdom we ever heard. What does it mean? Ata gazarta, you decreed boilam hazeh, boilam haba. What does it mean you decreed boilam haba? So Rashi explains, power only decreed in this world, but your decree is worse since it affects olam haba. It affects olam haba. When a mother gives birth to a Jewish baby boy, and afterwards Paroi, says Rashi, comes and drowns him in the Nile River, the baby boy immediately reaches olam haba. Why? Because he passed through this world, even for an hour, even for a minute. He has a great future in olam haba. And Rashi says that we have a olam haneshamas. In the celestial world, there's a world of souls. And there's also olam haba, Gan Eden shel Malo. For a Jewish soul to reach Gan Eden shel Malo, so he has to pass through this world. It's a condition, a t'nai. So your gezerah is much worse than Paroi, because all of these neshamas will never come to the supreme, blissful world of olam haba, and binene miziv ashrina, be reunited with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They have to pass through this world, even for a second. So therefore, your gezerah affects millions of neshamas. He understood that. Rashi says it clear. They're born v'mesim, v'chayzrim, v'chayim heim no'olam haba. Nevertheless, they're restored to the true life, the supreme life of a blissful existence in the world to come. Ata gazarta b'olam hazeh u'b'olam haba. Kivan she'ein noildim, since they're not born, einu boim lo'olam haba, they cannot come to olam haba. So the drowned babies, if they just come for 1 second into this world, will live again into their afterworld. Unborn children that are neshamis, from the Olam HaNeshamis, are denied that supreme blessing. So we see, remarkably, there's no words to describe this remarkable madrega of the Jewish people, that their first avodah in Mitzrayim, which they undertook in such bitter conditions and under such diabolical decrees, was, as the Gemara says, Amram hechzech es ishto yom tekul hechziru es nesheseyam, and they brought children into this world, even though mothers realized that the pain and the suffering that they will have to endure when the Gestapo, the police force, the military force of Mitzrayim, as Rashi states, comes and snatches away the baby in front of the mother and father, and the mother can theoretically become insane, the pain excruciating, the suffering overwhelming. Nevertheless, the most courageous and heroic generation of all time, Noshim Tzidkoniyos, the great pious women of that time, and the piety of their husbands, that was no less of a source of suffering and pain, brought children into the world. This was their first avodah, because they came to the realization that what are we here for? To do something purposeful. And this, under these conditions, we're talking about a generation without Torah. They had a Jewish identity, but they did not have Torah. So this generation had a new motto. The motto of Amram, when he divorced his wife, decided not to bring children into the world, was Lashav anu Amelim. In vain we struggle to bring children into the world. But Miriam changed that. And what was the motto of the Jewish people? L'tachlis anu Amelim. We are struggling, but we're struggling for a great tachlis, a great purpose. We're not bringing children into the world for our sake. We're bringing children into the world for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this was the great level that Jewish people reached. No question about it. The tzaddikim of World War II would have done the same thing. Even in the concentration camps, the extermination camps, they would have brought children into the world. That's a tachlis. Don't keep them in the Olam HaNeshamis. Give them the greatest bracha possible to come into Olam Haba. However, the Nazim went one step beyond Mitzrayim. And that was if they noticed that a woman, a married woman, was pregnant, so they would kill her right away together with the Vlad. So therefore there was no possibility, because there was a real pikuach nefesh. But the great generation of the Holocaust could have done the same thing. And as we know, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows us better than we know ourselves, and the Jewish people, as well as the Goyim, on Judgment Day, are not only judged for what actions and activities they engage in, or what actions and activities they disengage in, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows the person so well. He knows what he would have done under the circumstances and conditions had he been allowed to do it. So insofar as that perspective is concerned, so also people of the Holocaust reached the highest of all generations and times of the dark and grisly night. The Jewish people reach above and beyond, and they come to the conclusion that their avodah now is the tachlis anu amelum. We're here for a purpose, to do the avodah, the service of a Kadosh Baruch Hu.